Well, thanks for reminding me about that, because I think it always pays to look back at previous markers in history to realise that these are not uniquely bad times. It's always been challenging. But here's the thing, Stephen. I mean, you could compare it in a way with the sort of hero quality that they gave Che Guevara, who was a cold-blooded revolutionary killer who thought that the more brutal you were to the revolution's enemies, the more virtuous you were. You could compare it to the mid-1970s when the intelligentsia were lockstep behind Pol Pot and his murderous regime, cracking open bottles of champagne in the common rooms when the Khmer Rouge marched into Phnom Penh. But here's the thing. There was at least a plausible excuse of ignorance in those cases, possibly not in 9/11, but certainly in the Khmer Rouge example. But today, you've got young activists out there with all the evidence they need in their pocket that an atrocity is being committed, and who committed it, and whose side we should be standing on. And yet their ability to filter out reality is just amazing.
Yeah, and I suppose we can probably distinguish between two kinds of supporters of this. There are those who aren't necessarily university educated, but who are either directly from regions in the Middle East, or their parents are directly from regions in the Middle East, and they have just many have just imbibed a fierce anti-Israel, pro-Hamas, pro-Palestinian sentiment. And you saw a lot of those on the sort of around the Opera House the other day after this immediately happened, and on the streets in Sydney, literally just celebrating. The video clips are all on Twitter for people to see. And then there's the other class of people whose first instinct is not so much to express support and grief for Israel, but to express support and solidarity with sort of Palestine, and quite frankly, many of the people who are celebrating these attacks. And that is university students who have nothing to do with the Middle East themselves, but have for decades been told by their university professors that Israel is the aggressor, Palestine is the victim, and the existence of Hamas is just a natural expression of the legitimate grievances of Palestinians against Israel. In fact, literally just yesterday, I noticed that the professor of linguistics, Nick Riemer at Sydney University, he reposted a declaration from many Sydney University academics declaring that they will have nothing to do with Israeli conferences, Israeli academics. They won't invite Israeli academics over to give papers and things like that. And Nick Riemer was posting on Twitter how delighted he was that in wake of the latest attacks against Israel, some Sydney University academics had signed onto that document. And so what is the response of some academics in Australia? It's actually to reaffirm their decision to have nothing to do with Israeli intellectuals. And that mindset is something that has filtered down to students over years and years and years, to the point that universities are becoming places where sort of openly students who are openly supportive of Israel feel quite unsafe. In fact, they've felt that way certainly for the last few days.